Hey everyone, I'm here today with Andrew Bird from Foundstone Advisory. How are you doing, Andrew?
Good, Amy. Lovely to see you.
It's great to see you too. And look, I thought I wanted to bring you on because, we've been working together for a little while now, and your journey through business, and particularly when it comes to getting out from behind the scenes on LinkedIn and actually starting it to get it working for your business, has been pretty incredible to watch. So why don't we dive in first to, just share a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in business? And why did you decide that Foundstone Advisory as a consulting business was the right way to go for you?
Yeah, it's a good question, Amy. So I think thinking back from over the years, the last probably 10 or 20 years in my past, I was in the digital and technology sectors. So working for some fairly large scale technology organizations.
Yeah.
There were organizations that were both consulting around technology services, edging up into business strategy. But there are also large-scale application development, outsourcing, cloud migration, those sorts of things. So I was in a few different roles in those organisations. Account management, business development, and then consulting and a more of a principal role.
Mm.
So I saw a pretty varied spectrum of customers out there. There was a few different industries that I was involved in over the years, and they varied.
Yeah.
And I suppose over those 10 or 20 years, I mean, you look at technology, and I've heard some of your commentary on it, the huge shift, even the last few years,
Yeah.
let alone, thinking 10, 20 years ago, what it was like. So I had the benefit over those years of really seeing some of the change in the industry, and then even more importantly, seeing some of the change in the mindset behind what was happening with technology.
Mm.
So fast forward to now, Foundstone, we're a business advisory. We do a lot of work around strategy and customer engagement.
Yep.
So there's certainly some of the same principles that I learnt over the years within digital and technology. We bring the good stuff into having conversations with mid-size organisations normally around their overall organisation strategy and where they're heading for the next little while.
Yeah, brilliant. And how was that transition for you? I know for a lot of people, when they've gone from, I guess, and doing the doing and being really, really good in their roles to then, really launching out on their own and standing on their own 2 feet, and I guess themselves as a brand as well as the business as a brand. Like, how was that transition for you?
Yeah, it was pretty big, to be honest, and it was pretty daunting initially.
Yeah.
I wasn't, to be brutally honest, I wasn't really sure how I was going to react.
Yeah.
I've been working in corporate for many years, as an employee,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved most of my time there. I guess some of the reasons for the move, I was looking, life beyond corporate, and there's so much change and unknowns in various sectors.
Mm-hmm.
But I really wanted to start to carve something out for myself.
Yeah.
So initially, it was definitely, a bit daunting, and asking myself, who am I to be going out there and starting a business in terms of consulting to other people.
Mm.
But once I made that leap and working with people like yourselves in terms of being able to really sit back and say, well, this is the lived experience you have,
Yeah.
and here's where it's really relevant. That gave me, a lot of the confidence to continue building those conversations with customers. And it's still an ongoing thing. It's always checking in and saying, okay, what is it about my lived experience can I really bring to another organization or to another human? That's really what it's about. Business consulting is very much a human level behind everything else. What is it can I bring that will give someone a new perspective or a new learning? So it's been a big learning curve over the last few years, and I think the beauty of it is it's an ongoing thing, isn't it? If you're not constantly being aware of what you can improve, there's probably something wrong, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. I think there's an element of kind of like putting the ego to one side and being like, right, now I feel like a bit of a fish out of water. You're very effective in one area of your life. And then it's like when you make that change and you make that transition, sometimes it can feel like you're just jumping into a whole new fish pond and you're really not sure how to swim. So
very, very true.
Yeah.
And I think even acknowledging that, for other people that are perhaps looking to make the launch, I know you're working with a number of people that either are looking to make the leap out of a corporate and employee steady job.
Yeah.
Although we'd probably have to agree that there's probably no steady job like it was 10, 20 years ago, was there? So
Absolutely.
I think that that's even that mindset thinking, as an employee, there's probably a degree of safety there in terms of longevity, but I think there's so much change within so many different sectors. It probably has even changed with that in terms of the safety of being an employee is not the same as it was many years ago. So that's interesting, I think.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I remember when I felt like I had a secure job
Mhm.
back a few years ago.
Yep.
I thought, I'll be in this job and I'll climb the corporate ladder, I'll work my way up. And then I was made redundant only a few months later. So that was kind of like the universe saying, all right, now off you go.
Yeah, brilliant. It's brilliant, and it sometimes takes that for most of us, doesn't it? A bit of a nudge to take that next step. So
Yeah, absolutely. And so when it came to getting yourself out from behind the scenes and really being like, okay, now I'm in business, now comes the problem of, okay, how am I going to get clients? And where do these clients
yes,
come from? And how do I get them to believe and know and trust in what I can help them do? And how do I feel good about that in myself to take them through a process so, you don't feel like a sleazy car salesman or anything like that. Some of the old school sales that are
yep,
just way too
yep.
old. So
Mhm.
what was your strategy? And I guess, I know we've worked on a lot of your LinkedIn strategy as a part of this, but what was the initial sort of strategy and what were some of the challenges you first faced when it came to getting clients for your business?
So I think it's actually good to stand back and look at it now, and of course it is an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
But when I do stop and look about how I approached it, I think the first thing that I really wanted to become a bit surer of is in terms of in myself, being very sure within myself of what, why I was doing this, and then what it is through my own experience I could bring benefit to someone else. Because I think if you haven't got that reasonably clear, then perhaps you can probably struggle then trying to communicate that to other people. So I think I spent a fair bit of time in the small organisation that we are, the other people that are involved, in really taking a step back and trying to become really aware of what it is at the heart of what we're providing. So business consulting is a pretty broad subject.
Yeah.
Strategy and customer engagement is pretty broad, and inherently it can be a bit stale. It can be a bit corporate. Can be very methodology based. So we made a conscious decision that we were going to, and it felt right to be quite unconventional. We looked at initially what is all the conventional things within the consulting sector that to be honest, now going forward, and particularly the last 18 months, what most of us has been through, a lot of that we see has probably become a bit less relevant. So we got real clarity around what that difference was going to be around being deliberately unconventional. And then we set about planning around how could we help people to become aware, firstly, that we even exist.
Yeah.
So we're a small business. There's only a few of us. How could we get the most impact in terms of building awareness around that we firstly exist, and then getting people to get a snippet of what we do, and then could they get some value from our services? So I think that was the real starting point, and it was initially a bit daunting, perhaps, to look at that, because coming from as an employee, you can probably always kind of look around and you can say, well, I'm depending on this brand or that brand, this marketing team, or that comms team. So it can be a bit daunting, but I've got to say, once we got into it, and perhaps a bit of insight for people that are looking to make a leap, it was actually quite invigorating in terms of there was a blank canvas there. And I'd never had that feeling in the past. There was constraints to a degree, working for a larger corporate, that you couldn't say certain things. Everything had to be checked. So that was definitely invigorating, that approach. And I think LinkedIn then, working with yourself was definitely at the core of it in terms of helping me to put some of the messaging out there, and then testing that messaging and getting feedback. So I think that was definitely a huge part.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched on some really good points there around like having a blank canvas. Like it's actually quite refreshing to be able to do that. But it, at the same time, like you said, it's that fear of the unknown that can be a little bit scary for people as well. And then ultimately what you have to do in business is you just have to kind of go for it, back yourself, and get the right support, like you said as well. So much easier when you're learning from someone that's sort of been there, done that, right?
Yeah. And I think to add to that, I think, the work that you did with us, over the last couple of years, I think when I stand back and look what really was the impact and the learnings from us, I think initially it was, getting confidence that, everyone has a genuine lived experience that they have, and whether that's going into a consulting business or a product business. I think once you really dig deep and you look at some of the experiences you've had, both in broader life and in business and being an employee, there's always things that your own unique experience that you'll be able to find that you can bring that will bring value. So I think you helped us tap into that for myself personally, and are continuing to do so, and helped us from an organizational point of view really get some solid belief around taking that to market. And some of that was testing that out on LinkedIn, or others was just conversation with potential customers. So I think that was definitely a big impact.
Yeah, awesome. And it's definitely important. And I know the work that you do with your clients as well, in terms of helping them to articulate their strategy and the direction that they're going in terms of, you're working with some huge names in the corporate space now, which is awesome to see. And I know with the changes that have been happening in the last few years, you've said it's an evolving process as well. So to have someone to lean on and to see your blind spots and to be able to say, hey, don't go down this road, have you thought about this? Like it just cuts down so much time. So I know you do that with your clients as well, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, you're helping us to see our blind spots. We could have gone down a number of different routes that perhaps would have led us for months or even years down a direction that we probably wouldn't have had a whole lot of impact through. But I think working with someone like yourself, and even looking at the broader market, from a consulting perspective, if someone can communicate, this is what I did and this is what I learned from, to have some of the battle scars around that, I think that is huge in terms of having insights, as opposed to reading the theory, reading someone, from maybe a complete different country or region. Having someone like yourself locally in our market, giving us those pointers was huge as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And what are some of the results that you've experienced since sort of going out in business, saying, hey, I'm in business, come talk to us, come find us, and sort of implementing those strategies? Like, what are some of the results that you've experienced? Maybe some things that you didn't expect to happen as well. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, I think, when you look at it from a LinkedIn perspective, I think you gave us the kind of the courage to really, detail some of the things, whether it be through articles, whether through posts of the like, to really look at, digging deep and sharing, from our own personal experiences. There's the content and there's the sharing of value on LinkedIn that is very corporate based, sitting behind a brand, and a lot of it can perhaps, we don't get to a very human level. But I think, the reason why we looked at some of your services in particular was there was a real authenticity behind it. You could see that, you weren't trying to be someone, someone you weren't, or you were trying to be. Amy, that's right. That's right. And I can relate to that. Sometimes it is daunting putting yourself out there. It is, how are people going to react to this? And it's still a challenge for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah. The funny thing I've had, Andrew, was at an event one time, someone actually came up to me and she goes, oh, you're actually nice in real life as well. And I was like, what?
There you go. Well, I suppose it is surprising in a lot of situations. So I think that is unique, something that you offer, or something who you are, Amy. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, awesome. So tell me more about, what were some of the results? Like what were sort of the things that, LinkedIn sort of exposed you to that perhaps you weren't exposed to before?
Yeah, so I think going back to, initially it's around awareness. So, it gave us the scale. We spent a bit of time, producing some hopefully some pretty valuable content. So it gave us the awareness, the reach that you can get on LinkedIn in terms of, X amount of connections you have and then their connections.
Yep.
I think when you're putting out relevant content, the span and the reach that gets, I don't think there's anything you can really compare that to in digital marketing, traditional marketing, or even face-to-face, going out there and talking to people.
Yeah.
So I think the awareness piece was huge, and it's pretty hard sometimes to put some direct figures on awareness. But I think we look at some of the work we did over the last couple of years around that,
Yeah.
and we see it start to pay off now. We're having a conversation with someone we think has never really, we've spoken to, but like you helped us to see a few years ago, that those conversations now, people that have seen our posts, seen our videos, those sorts of things, the first coffee, the first meeting, you're generally way ahead of where you would have started from a cold conversation. They've seen a lot of who you are, your conversations. So I think that helps everyone leapfrog, from all just the boring getting to know someone.
Yeah.
You can dive straight into what is the value and what are we potentially going to do together from a partnership.
Yeah.
So I think that was huge. In terms of what else, I think once we were producing those hopefully valuable bits of content, that when then we were getting in touch through a direct message or a call or conversation, I think it's sped up. It's certainly sped up the conversation around moving to that next step, and then to hopefully being a client. But I think it also opened up LinkedIn for us. It also helped us build a community. So by genuinely going out there and getting involved in conversations, commenting on other, they could be direct competitors in theory, or they could be other consultants or customers. It inherently, helped us form a community that we weren't just trying to sell services. We were becoming part of whatever that community was and is looking to be. And it seemed to change the whole dynamic in our conversations. It wasn't about selling or trying to pitch a product. It was literally saying, this is what we're seeing and this is our perspective.
Yeah.
So I think, and I hope that LinkedIn will continue that direction in terms of that. There's a lot of noise in there and a lot of probably stuff that isn't relevant. But I think the connection piece and the sharing of lived experiences is one of the big ones going forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the aspect of building a community is pretty huge, because there's so much noise out there on social media. It doesn't matter whether you look at Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn, there's huge noise out there. But I think LinkedIn, you're still able to get that real cut through to the right people and the decision makers, which is super important. So it seems like you've had that experience, which is awesome. And tell me about where you want to take it now. You've had some success with LinkedIn. I know last time we spoke as well, I think you had 100 leads that were coming through that you need to be able to follow up on. So how are you in terms of, building the business off the back of that? And what's the big vision and the big future of where you can take this now?
Yeah, no, that is a good question, Amy, because it's constantly evolving, isn't it? And and the inherent nature of what we do, it's about constantly checking in around where the market's at, where our customers are at, and then evolving from there. So I think, so it has, getting the message out there through the likes of LinkedIn and the advice that you've given us over the last couple of years. I think, we've grown now a groundswell of, conversations that we're having, into the 50, the hundreds.
Yeah.
And those conversations are they seem like they're solid conversations. It's not just a lead for the sake of it.
Yeah.
The people that have come through our different channels are really resonating with the content. So we're attracting customers that are aligned to our values and our principles. So I think it's good for customers because they get to weed through perhaps the organizations they don't want to work with, but also the organizations that they do. So all those conversations that we're having now, it's a bit of a juggling act keeping up with them, to be honest, in a good sense.
Yeah.
Because what we've found is, it is. And I think what the good problem is to have is you don't want too much volume there that you can't have that genuine conversation. I think we're at a stage now we're having those genuine conversations where we're starting to partner. Well, some of those clients have selected us as a partner and we're starting to work with them.
Yeah.
So I think it now is really a mix of continuing to build that community to onboard new customers.
Yeah.
But it's also, keeping those existing customers so that they are very they know they're actually part of a community. And I think, the engagement we have with customers, if even if they're a current customer, they'll see perhaps a post we put out there.
Yeah.
That is indirectly still value that we're providing to that customer. They're then seeing perhaps the other customers or potential customers that are getting involved in that, and that's opening up doors for them.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, we didn't really see that initially, that, you know, by creating that community, you're actually providing value as a service through that.
Yeah.
So that was one big insight we had, and we want to continue to grow that.
Yeah.
I think at a grassroots, you know, developing new customers, I think, you know, it's about nurturing those conversations that we've got.
Yeah.
It's also then about, you know, linking in other partnerships we have out there. You know, we do our homework in terms of people, you know, we work with from a principals perspective, and hopefully then, you know, through that community as well, we're providing value to customers that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I've always loved your focus on value. I think it's super important when it comes to your customers, like, and creating that whole ecosystem. Like you said, it's not about, you know, onboarding as many clients as you can sometimes. Like, it's obviously a good problem to have that you've got lots of conversations happening, but it's more so around selecting the right kind of people that you want to work with and the right kind of partners for your business. And ultimately that kind of gives you the sustainable growth as well to move beyond. So that's really, really cool to hear. That's awesome. So, you know, having been on the other side of it now, where you've kind of built up this beast, you're talking to some really great people in the corporate space, you're working with some awesome clients that I know you are, which is really cool. What would you say, or what kind of advice would you give to people that are still kind of hesitant, maybe a little bit, you know, scared, not quite ready, like all of these sorts of normal, like, feelings of self-doubt and everything that we have at the beginning, now coming out on the other side of it? Like, what would be some of your advice for those people?
Yeah, I think it's firstly, you know, having people you can turn to externally that you can really have a really frank and honest conversation with, people like yourself.
Yeah.
That you can talk about, you know, what am I fearful about? What am I hesitant to put myself out there? So to have those conversations with someone independent and someone that is going to be able to, you know, share their own experience is huge.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So surround yourself with people like yourself and other you know, people and organisations that can really give you that honest feedback. Because I think it's rarer to find people these days that you can have a very open conversation, but within that you can also, it's not just patting each other's back for the sake of it. You can really ask, what can I do better? What am I doing wrong? And then learn from that. So I think that's certainly one huge thing. From in terms of, you know, looking at from a mindset perspective and having the courage to kind of put yourself out there, I think you can start really small. And I think that was evident in some of the work we did together that you helped us with, was, you know, whether that be, writing just a very brief perspective on an article, say a Harvard article. You don't have to be the big thought leader to start with. You can look at, you know, content that is out there, existing content that really resonates with your own brand and the message you're trying to put out there, and then start to simply, you know, summarize some of the key bits within that bit of content, and then start slowly to put your own experience to that. And I think that helped us to build up the courage. We had the conviction initially, but we probably weren't ready to put out, you know, all our full-blown videos and content on day one. But we looked at other relevant content and other perhaps thought leaders out there, and then provided a perspective on what they were seeing and hearing. So I think is, you know, as opposed to trying to be, you know, the daunting thing of starting huge, it is to start small and in small chunks, to start to put some posts out there, to start to comment on other people's content. And I think that way, before you know it, you kind of look behind, and you've started then to produce your own articles, you know, video content, those sorts of things. So I think that'll, you know, by doing it that way, that give you the momentum. I think by also doing it that way is what you're saying to your community and your potential customers is, you know, I'm not just a thought leader that thinks this is the only way. You're actually involving them in the process. So in design thinking, some of what we do is actually, you know, listening to what is really happening out there in the sector, and what is really the problem, or what is actually happening behind the problem. So if you can get to a stage where your customers are actually giving you feedback at a very early stage around even your messaging and marketing, what seems to happen is the dynamic shifts from you just trying to be a thought leader to involving in design thinking. It's co-creation. you're involving them in that community from the early stages. And the surprise that we found is that actually builds a stronger, or can build a stronger relationship ongoing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that as well. It's like kind of your clients and your customers end up feeling like, oh, it was their idea to to come across you and work with you. And
Yes.
so, was it though?
Well, that's the beauty of it, because a lot of time, if I'm honest, in our consulting advisory business,
Yeah.
when we follow the principles that we work with our customers and then their customers, a lot of the time our customers, inherently have some of the answers there, and of course their customers have the answers there, but it's actually creating the space and the time to actually sit back and actually acknowledge and become aware of what is going to have the most impacts. And I think, that's some of the work that you've done with us. We've probably had some of the answers within us and within our own customer base,
Yeah.
but you've helped us, create the space and spend the time to actually have those answers surface. So I think that's been a big one as well.
Yeah. No, it's been absolutely great working with you as well, and continuing to work together, which is great. And the approach as well of the old school sales tactics and everything on LinkedIn and everywhere else just doesn't work anymore. No one wants to be spammed. No one wants to have these false, kind of inauthentic conversations that lead nowhere. You have to do it a different way if you're wanting to cut through the noise. And like you guys have, positioned yourselves as the authorities and the leaders in your space so that you attract the right kind of clients that, essentially come to you on autopilot now, which is great.
Yeah, and I think another thing that comes to mind is around consistency.
Yep.
So I think we can all have the big bold ideas, but another thing that you've really helped us to look at is, you don't have to start huge from day one. It's about consistently looking at the things that you can provide value and consistently putting those out into the ether, whether that be through LinkedIn or other ways, through conversations you're having. And it seems that if you are consistent in the way you do that, there might be times where you're sitting there and saying, this doesn't seem to be resonating at all. Days or weeks go by. But what we've found and what you've helped us to see is, by having that consistent way and that consistent method, that over time, if you are putting decent content out there and you're connecting, that in the long run, it will be sustainable. So I think a lot of these things they're simple, but they're not always easy to do.
Yeah.
Because it takes a bit of hard graft to be consistently doing that. So I think having the method that you helped show us around that was definitely a big advantage as well.
Yeah, there's one thing to know the theory and read about it, and
Yes.
another thing to actually go and execute on it and to have it work for your business as well, which is awesome to hear. So yeah, where can people find you, Andrew? You're out there now on LinkedIn, you're out there on another few different social platforms as well. So if there's businesses out there and they're really needing some help around their strategy and really wanting to get in touch with what their customers are actually thinking, not what they think their customers are thinking, where's the best way to reach out and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I think LinkedIn is the obvious one, isn't it? So is it Andrew Bird?
I would hope so.
So yeah, it's Andrew Bird, and then Foundstone Advisory is our company page. So they're probably the 2 points of contact on LinkedIn. And then our website, so foundstone.co is our website. We're building a fair bit of content around, interviews and videos that you've helped us with. And then Twitter, Foundstone _ on Twitter. So they're probably the main ones. And then good old email, of course. So andrew@foundstone.com. Nice and simple, hopefully.
Awesome. It's been, like I said, absolute pleasure working with you. We've got, there's many things that you've already achieved and many things that I'm really excited for you to implement moving forward as well. So watch this space, hey?
Well, thank you, Amy, and thank you for bearing with us over the time we've worked together, and we're really looking forward to continuing to do that and have a great partnership going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your time and sharing, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Amy. Cheers.